Every morning, he wakes up in someone else's life until he realizes he has taken it from its owner. The substitute lives. Rain tapped against the windowsill, steady and monotonous, like a metronome. Marcus Webb opened his eyes and immediately knew the room was not his. Heavy gray curtains let in a diffused light, and behind them loomed the silhouette of an old Victorian house across the street. He propped himself up on his elbows, catching the smell of freshly ground coffee and warm toast drifting from the kitchen. He looked around. On the nightstand, a clock with a chipped brass frame, under it a neatly folded newspaper with today's date. On the dresser, photographs, a smiling man in a garden, beside him a red-haired woman, children. Marcus didn't know them. Next to the frame lay a ticket for the Last Monologue, dated just a few days ago. The body felt like his, yet when he touched his face, he felt stubble and a jawline that didn't match the image in his memory, if that memory was still his. In the mirror opposite the bed stood a man in his 40s with tired eyes. The gaze felt both familiar and strange. He took the phone from the charger. The screen was crowded with notifications. Dad, don't forget the parent meeting. Meeting at 2 p.m. Call Mom. All addressed to Paul Harris. The name pricked at him, but triggered no recognition. In the gallery, a photo of a theater hall taken from the front row where the footlights drowned in the darkness of the seats. Seeking some anchor, he stood and went to the kitchen. Everything there made sense. A mug reading Best Dad, a letter rack, neatly stacked bills. He knew where the butter was, where the knife lay, how to turn on the radio. His hands moved without thought, as if they belonged to Paul. Memory offered him scenes. A schoolyard, his daughter's laughter, the taste of favorite jam, the clang of pots on Sundays. But beyond them yawned a void. Where was his own life? Where was the theater, the backstage, the smell of the dressing room? From the street came the clang of a tram, and he thought he heard a faint, rhythmic rustle of empty seats, as if someone moved in the dark hall. Then, almost hidden in the sound, came a whisper. "I'll take your day so you can live mine." Marcus understood. He hadn't just woken in another house. He had woken in another life. The morning began without panic, as if Paul's body knew its route. Marcus moved around the kitchen, packing his daughter's school lunch, bread, cheese, an apple, a chocolate bar. The freckled girl came in, gave him a glance, and said, "Dad, don't forget to pick me up at 4. He nodded automatically, but in that moment a wave of tenderness pierced him, so sharp his throat tightened. He felt it pulling from somewhere deep inside Paul himself, love mixed with the dread of losing this morning moment. On the way to the office, he recognized streets he'd never walked. Stoplights, pedestrians, the coffee shop on the corner, all resonated with a habit he had not earned. Passers-by nodded, called him Paul. He replied without faltering in tone. At the office, the smell of paper and printer toner hit his memory, and immediately came scraps of conversations, computer passwords, irritation toward one colleague, and respect for another. Marcus sat at the desk, entering numbers into spreadsheets, understanding every detail of someone else's work. Over lunch, he opened the news on his phone. Among the headlines, a brief note caught his eye. Audience member collapsed after premiere of The Last Monologue. Doctors puzzled. The photo was blurry, but he recognized the stage. That evening, tucking his daughter into bed, he found himself knowing the words to her favorite lullaby. His voice trembled, but she listened with a smile. In her eyes was unconditional trust, trust that wasn't his to claim. That night, he lay in bed, trying to hold on to this life, the blanket scent, the wind in the garden. Maybe by morning it will be over, he thought. But he woke in another room, in another woman's body, with another set of memories. He took a notebook and for the first time wrote name, date, city, so they wouldn't vanish in the chaos. The third morning began in the body of Harold Baxter, a school librarian. Marcus had stopped being startled by new reflections in the mirror, but guilt grew inside him. Each time he took a place in a life someone else might lose forever. Sorting books in the library, he saw a familiar name on a poster pinned to the notice board. The play, The Last Monologue. Beneath the title, his own face smiling from the stage. His heart clenched. That same day, while Harold drank tea in the staff room, Marcus used his laptop. Searching the names of previous hosts brought a strange coincidence. All were listed as audience members at that production. He looked up Paul Harris. The news said he was in intensive care. The same with the woman whose body he'd inhabited yesterday, and so on down the chain. That evening, going through old boxes in the library archive, Marcus found a worn copy of the play. On the cover, the theater archive stamp. Inside, a different order of lines and pencil notes in the margins. Hold the pause, look in the eyes, give the breath. Between the pages lay a newspaper clipping. The playwright had died soon after the premiere 30 years ago, and the current director had supposedly found the script in the theater basement. Marcus began to piece together a formula, a text with a ritual structure, times his own extreme empathy on stage, the hall's unique acoustics where every word caught on a listener. Together, they formed a mechanism capable of pulling someone's self across through contact. He reopened the altered final monologue and read a line that chilled him. "I'll take your day so you can live mine. You won't notice when we've switched places." He remembered the premiere, a full house, the warm footlights, the magnetic sense of connection to the audience. And now, replaying that moment, he clearly saw. A few people in the hall stared at him with motionless, entranced expressions, as if he held their breath in his hands. That night he couldn't sleep. The list of names and faces looped in his mind. The guilt for having caused their silence weighed heavier than fear for himself. The fourth morning brought a new body, middle-aged Claire Dalton, owner of a small bakery on the outskirts. Marcus woke to the smell of fresh bread, but instead of morning focus, felt a void, as if part of his own memory had been cut away overnight. He tried to recall the address of the theater where he had performed for years, and couldn't. The street name slipped away like a wet thread through his fingers. His first director's face appeared without a name. Gaping holes began to appear in his biography, and these blanks frightened him most of all. Claire lived above the bakery. Going downstairs, he saw a stack of unpaid bills on the counter. As soon as his eyes caught the word overdue, his body tensed, breath quickened, hands shook, chest tightened, as if the air had been sucked from the room. A panic attack, sharp, uncontrollable, alien. He understood. This wasn't his emotion, but Claire's fear, soaked into the body like the yeast smell in the bakery walls. That evening, he opened the laptop again. The Last Monologue audience list was now almost entirely crossed out with coma notes. Only two remained untouched, a young waiter and an elderly music teacher. It felt like a timer ticking in his head. Their turn was coming, and he didn't know how to stop it. The next day, he confided in a former theater colleague. They met in a small cafe. He spoke about switching bodies, the audience lists, the strange playtext. Her eyes slowly filled with wariness. "Do you even hear yourself?" she finally said, pushing her cup aside. "This sounds like a nervous breakdown, Marcus." He fell silent, realizing he had just lost the only person he could trust. That evening, walking home, he felt the city grow colder. For the first time, he thought this story might end not only with others disappearing, but with the complete loss of himself. On the sixth morning, Marcus woke in the body of Thomas Kerr, a music teacher. In his house, among the old piano and stacks of yellowed sheet music, he found an envelope with no stamp or address. The handwriting was unmistakably his own. The letter read, "If you're reading this, time is short. The only way to bring them back is to perform the monologue again. Give everything. Keep nothing. Speak the lines on the exhale to release, not to hold. Signed, M.W. Marcus realized he himself, in some earlier day, had already known how to break the chain. He had to perform the last monologue in an empty hall, delivering each line on the outbreath, returning memories and voices. But the price was clear. He would lose not only the memories of his roles, but also the inner fire that had drawn him to the stage. The art, as he knew it, would be gone. That evening he went to the theater. Empty foyer, muted scent of dust and old wood. On stage, he placed paper markers on the seats with the names of all taken audience members. On the apron, Paul's pen, Claire's pie recipe, Harold's old ticket. Each item an anchor to their life. He checked the lights, a single spotlight for each name. When he spoke a line, the light would shine on that seat, returning it to its owner. Everything was ready. Marcus stood center stage, staring into the dark hall. Inside, fear of losing himself wrestled with the resolve to restore others. His hands trembled, but there was no turning back. He stepped to the wings and pulled the lever. The hall went dark. He took a deep breath. The spotlights seared his eyes, but Marcus didn't look away. The empty hall was filled only with paper name tags. He stepped toward the apron and spoke the opening line, on the exhale as if releasing something from within. At once, in the seat marked Paul Harris, a faint image flared, a man in a sweater holding his daughter. A soft counter wind swept across the stage, carrying away a piece of Marcus's memory, the smell of the dressing room before a premiere. Next line, another seat, Claire Dalton. A flash, a flour-dusted woman smiling as she pulled bread from the oven. The wind took the name of his first director. He went on. With each phrase, light illuminated a seat and memories tore loose and fled. First role, backstage laughter, debut night fear. His voice faltered, fingers trembled, legs grew heavy. Sometimes he forgot the words and for a moment could not recall fellow actors' names, as if they had never existed. Each time he released a line, somewhere far away an answer came. In the hospital, Liam moved his fingers. In Claire's house, a hand reached to turn off the oven. Someone opened their eyes. Someone sighed deeply for the first time in months. In the climax, he reached the final line. His voice was almost a whisper, but he poured into it all that remained. "Give me back my morning, and I'll give you your night." With that, the wind swept away the last warm ember, the one that lit whenever he stepped on stage. Emptiness filled everything. The spotlights went out. Marcus stood in silence, breathing slow and heavy. He bowed, deep, without an audience, only toward the empty hall. The habit remained. The name was gone. A fine rain streaked the shop windows, blurring reflections. Marcus, or whoever he had become, rearranged books on the shelves of a small shop on St. Andrew Street. The paper smelled of dust and printer's ink. He liked the scent, though he didn't know why. The radio announcer's voice came on. Doctors report a series of mysterious awakenings from comas over the last 24 hours. Causes remain unknown. No names, no mention of the theater. Marcus listened absently, as if it concerned someone far away. After lunch, he went for a walk. On a street corner, his eyes caught on an old theater building. Stone walls, faded posters in tarnished frames. He moved closer without knowing why. Before the display case, he stopped. On the poster, the Last Monologue, and the face of a man smiling from the stage. The face was vaguely familiar, but the name beneath sparked nothing. And yet, his body, as if on command, gave a slight half-bow. He didn't even realize he'd done it. In the glass's reflection, he saw himself in a dark coat. But over his shoulder stood another shadow. in a stage costume, looking straight at him. He blinked, and it was gone. Somewhere deep in the theater, like the echo of a distant stage, the faint rustle of empty seats stirred, and then faded, as if forever. Marcus lingered a moment more, then turned and walked away, dissolving into the rainy crowd.